Vibram outsole, leather midsole, leather insole, and heel counter with a double row stitch down construction. Is this the best value boot for your money? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy. I've been a big fan of Thursday boots for a long time. Really, my first Goodyear welted boot was a pair of Thursday boots. But there's been a lot of complaints about Thursdays, almost like they're just a sneaker boot combination because how they're built on this fiberboard insole just doesn't sit well with a lot of boot guys. So what they did is they decided to take their best artisans and the best materials and make their Challenger boot. And they made something that is an unbelievable value with this boot. And if you like this style, you might not be able to beat this value. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep dive into this boot and see what you get for that low price and see who it's for and if it's really worth it. So what I'll do is I'll turn the camera around and we'll look at this boot in detail. One of the cool things about the Rose Anvil effect on the boot market is when these were released, they gave you a cut in half a version of the boot on their website so you could see what you were really getting. And I believe even just them building this boot, Rose Anvil and his channel has a lot of credit to be given to them just because this is like their answer to the fiberboard, their answer to the Poron. And so we're going to look at that cutout together, that cut in half together on their website in just a bit. But first, let's examine these boots and their quality control, and we'll go over what we can see from the outside. The first thing we'll start off is with the sole. So it's a Vibram sole. This is a name brand sole, and it's just a huge, chunky, thick lugged Vibram sole. Now, real boot guys will know the model number of this sole, but I don't really care that much about it. I just know that it's something that is going to have a ton of grip and it's going to be something that will be great for doing some serious work in. You can see the double row stitch down through the front half of the boot. Looks really clean. I'm really surprised by how nicely the stitching looks on this boot. Not that Thursdays has bad stitching in the past. It's just, doing something new like this with the double row, you'd think there'd be some learning curves, and maybe there were, they don't tell us about it. But then you have this thick, leather heel stack, which is cool. We like having leather heel stacks. It makes it better when you're going to resole. A lot of times a cobbler can use the leather heel stack, so that's great. It's a plus for this boot. Now let's look at the midsole. So they kind of stained this, so you don't see the midsole really clearly, but it is a pretty thick leather slab that they're using as the midsole. So that's a huge positive and, can be compared to my whites at least. That's one issue with me reviewing this boot as opposed to someone like Carl Morawski or Weston from Rose Anvil or just other guys who have builder pros. They're going to know more about how to compare this to a Nick's boot. I have had Vibergs, I have White's boots. It's my really knowledge on that isn't the best, so I'm going to give you just kind of what I see with this limited experience. But I think that midsole is a nice big, thick slab, so I think it looks good. Then we come to the double row stitch down. This isn't Viber quality, but I think the stitch down is pretty good. It's a nice looking, stitch per inch. It's not super tight. Viberg is just getting so tight with their stitch per inch. It makes it's almost like too dressy in a way, but it looks great. I do love the Viberg stitch down, but this is what you would normally see, I think, with stitches. So it looks good. I think Thursday did a great job of getting that looking nice, before they sent this boot out or this makeup out. Now for the upper and the quality control, it does seem okay. It's not the best. There's things like this little, I don't know what that is. Is that a stain? It's just the waxy pull-up. I don't know if that was in finishing, but you can just see something there. Not a big deal. Mine, just a little bit of loose grain already right here, which I don't care about. I'm not a huge loose grain snob. But for what the boot is and the price, I mean, it's fantastic. The stitching is really good. There's no loose stitching. Everything is clean. The cap toe stitching looks really clean. I mean, Thursdays, they know how to build a good boot. So that's what you're getting. You're getting their, expertise in this style of boot. Even the pull handle, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's a really nice thick pull handle. I don't think you're going to have any problems with that pull handle. Then when it comes to the hardware, they didn't really beef up the hardware like crazy with this boot. It seems fairly standard to their normal hardware, but I mean, I've never really had problems with this hardware. The only boot I've ever had problems with the speed hooks, to be honest with you, is my indie boots, my Alden indie boots, and that's not a huge problem, but they're just a little bit more fragile. But these look like they're going to be fine. They're smooth on the inside, so it's not going to mess up the tongue. And the tongue is a nice fully gusseted tongue all the way up to the top, so that's great. And it's a nice thin malleable leather, so it's been really comfortable just having put them on a couple of times. So I'm super happy with that. One thing I will say by my comparison to my whites or my Vibergs is this, and I know this is a leather heel counter, we'll talk about that more in just a bit, but this is like a really soft, thin leather heel counter. So this is another kind of aspect where this doesn't really compare to the Nix boots, the whites boots, or the Vibergs. This is it's going to be more of a comfort forward type of logger boot rather than a super secure heel. It does seem a little bit, short to me, but again, my heel falls into this. It's comfortable. I don't notice this, but it is just something I did want to mention. When it comes to the overall aesthetics of the boot and how it's built and this challenging construction, a lot of times brands will have problems because this is a true cap toe. That double layer of thickness there, when they do the stitch down, it looks really good. But it's just not a perfect boot. It's not Viberg by any means. But I mean, again, under $300, you're not expecting that. So let me just show you the other boot real quick. See if you can find anything different on this boot while we prepare to do the dive into the boot that is going to be courtesy of Thursday and on their website. And just FYI, I paid my own cash for this boot. That's not a sponsor video. Everything I've said to this point and that I will say is all just my own opinion. And I will end with a kind of breakdown of what I really think about the boot, but let's look at the website and see what's inside this boot. Again, one of the main things I think is so awesome about Thursday boots is all the sizes it comes in. Now, ignore this. I don't know if they did a small run of these super premium leathers. They have their black label and they have their evergreen label. Their evergreen label is the more affordable 2 boots, but these sold out super quick. And, they had like a shell quarter van, a couple shells, not one shell, I think, 1 horse rump and 1 T-core leather, if I'm right. But they must have just done a super limited run because they sold out super quick. But in the boot that I'm reviewing and in their other boot, I mean, look how many different sizes you have. And they need wider widths. I saw that in my unboxing video, the response to that in the comments. So thanks for making that noted, because hopefully they'll do that. They'll give you wider widths. But I mean, it's free shipping, free returns, any size you want. And this came to me in like 4 days. Again, I have no connection with the brand. They didn't know I was reviewing it. And I've heard some people waiting up to 2 weeks, but for me, it was 4 days. If I order a pair of Builder Pros right now, it's going to take like forever in my YouTube boot review mind, because I'm a terrible planner when it comes to this channel. But that is a topic for another day. One thing you will notice, I did double check this once I got it, is that it says that it comes with 2 sets of laces. Mine didn't. That's not the end of the world. If I reached out to Thursday, I think they would do something about this, but I'm not complaining. It's $289 for this boot, and let's see what you really get with this boot. Now, there's no cutaway of this exact boot, which is a little bit worrisome, but if you go to their black label, you will see a cutaway. We'll just look at that there, enlarge it, and see what we're getting here, because it's a lot of really good stuff, which is interesting too, because I'm going to mention something real quick here. It doesn't look like anything is in the heel. I don't know what this boot is, or it's definitely that Rambler, I guess, but there's nothing in the heel on this boot. The website says they have a leather heel counter. Why'd you go back to there? Okay, come on, guys. Or if you go to like their shell boot and see that cut in half, I'm sorry. I thought I saw a picture when these first release of a cut in half boot, and please, if you saw this too in the comments, to say something about it, where there was one that had a leather heel counter, but I think they removed it. I don't think there is a leather heel counter. So there you go. There's your first thought of what this boot really is made for. This boot isn't really made for serious work, but that's just one of the negatives. But there's a lot of positives to see in this boot. Starting with that leather heel stack just looks great. The leather midsole, it's really thick. Now I want to give my opinion, which is laughable because of my experience with these boots, but with these grooves. So what these grooves, that they must have cut these grooves right under the ball of the foot to help it be more flexible. The reason why I am going to give you my opinion is because I just broke in a pair of boots that were made very similar to this, double row stitch down leather heel leather midsole, leather insole, just like this. And the flexibility was so terrible, it gave me such a bad blister on my heel because I couldn't flex this. And I'm not doing real work. So I actually had to take the boot and put the toe of the boot on the ground and squish it and force it to flex several times before I wore it each time. And I finally got this leather midsole to flex, and I stopped getting the rubbing on my heel. So I do think they know their clientele. They know that this isn't going to be a boot that someone's going to be doing a lot of hard work in. This is going to be a boot that they want to have comfort relatively quick. And by putting those relief cuts, it's going to be easier. It's way more flexible, kind of instantly more comfortable. And it's just something that I observed, but it was just because I broke in a pair of boots like this. Then, you have your leather insole and then some pour-on and then that leather sock liner. So you have a ton of leather underneath your foot. There's really a lot to like here. The biggest downer I'm seeing right now is just that leather heel, the absence of that leather heel counter. Now, when you come to the leather tongue being fully gusseted and the true cap toe, what you're getting with this boot is something truly special with that price. Now, don't go compare this boot to a pair of Nick's boots or to a pair of White's boots. It is not the same thing. It might look like it, and to some passing you by in New York, they might think it's a Nick's or a pair of White's, but this isn't that. You can see the difference. This isn't made for super tough work. Yeah, you'll be able to do a ton of stuff, probably 90% of the stuff that you could do in a pair of those better boots. But this isn't really a boot that I think like a wildland firefighter is going to want to take out miles deep into the forest, just because this heel is just going to be an issue, in my opinion, if this is what the boots are looking like. And to my feel, it was very soft, but that's just my opinion, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. I'm just going to give you my opinion because I am going to do it. But let's turn the camera back around, and I'll give you kind of the bottom line. Is it worth the money, and where this ranks on my best value boots series? So what do I think? Is it worth the money? Oh, absolutely. That goes without saying, really. When it comes to value in this boot, it's a 10 out of 10. I mean, what you get for $289 is kind of ridiculous. You just wonder if they're losing money on this boot to try to promote the sales of other boots. Honestly, that's how I feel. I feel that it's not a Nick's Builder Pro. It's not a Nick's Urban Logger. It's not a pair of Whites. But for $289 shipped to your house, it's unbelievable, and I would definitely recommend this boot. But there's a major downside to this boot that I have to bring up. It's how it looks. And what I'm talking about is the sole. The sole is not going to be for everybody. If this were on a wedge sole, maybe this were on like a mini lug sole, this were a block heel. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do with it, and maybe they'll bring those things in the future. Thursday's releasing new boots every week, it feels like now. Do you see their sneaker-like shell boots? I mean, I couldn't even imagine that. I couldn't even imagine this boot would ever come out, but it did. So maybe if they put it on a different sole, I think it'll have a little bit more of an appeal for a lot of guys, because it's just for not everyone wants this type of heel with this rugged of an outsole. But yeah, 10 out of 10. This is an amazing value. Thursday Boots really knocked it out of the park with the pricing on this. I love to see some other nicer leathers if they come in stock. Their shell, their T-core, their horse butts would be really cool. But those aren't going to be as good at a deal because this one comes in under $300. So this is going to be the best deal that they offer. So I do recommend it. If you like the look of it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I don't think it's going to fall apart. I think Thursday has shown with the reputation that you get a lot with it, and you get a pretty sweet return policy. So even if you want to try them out, try them on at least, do that. And if you don't like them, return them. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about this boot, please comment down below. I'll try to get back to them. And I appreciate you watching. If you watched to this point, please like the video. It helps me out, helps kind of promote the video a little bit. So I appreciate that. And subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see you on the next one.